The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.
Imagine you got ejected from your boat, fell overboard, or hit a rock and sank your boat. You're stranded in the open water. It's cold and will be dark soon. How could you save yourself? Find out as we head into the outdoors.
Into the outdoors!
A boat capsizing may seem like something that only happens in movies, but it can and does happen.
But it's actually accidents of people falling overboard that are the most common.
But that doesn't mean you should fear the water, though.
Being aware, prepared, and educated can all help save your life in the case of an emergency, or better yet, prevent them from happening.
You use technology every day, right? So then it shouldn't be surprising to know that there are all kinds of boating technologies that can help save your life.
But do you know what they are, how and when to use them? That's why we're here to help.
What is one accessory that you already know about that can save your life if something were to happen? I'll give you a hint. Charlie's wearing one. Exactly! A PFD, or a personal flotation device, like this one.
Wearing a PFD is the #1 way to save yourself from drowning in the case of a boating accident.
Plus, there are lots of other cool technologies that can save your life with just the push of a button.
In fact, you may already own one. A smartphone. You can use your phone to check the weather to see if conditions will be safe on the water, and you can use it to text your float plan to others.
Hey Bob, do you know what a float plan is? No, I've never heard of that before.
A float plan contains the basic information you'll need for your excursion, such as who is going, what kind of vessel you are using, when you are going, where you are going, and when you'll return. You can send your plan to multiple people via text so they know your plan for the day and can make sure you're meeting your checkpoints.
Smartphones are a great resource out on the water, and you may even be able to use your GPS for navigation. And if you're within cell service, you can use your phone to call for emergency assistance if needed.
But what if you're out of range? Depending on where you are, cell phones can have sketchy service offshore.
And sometimes they don't work well in water.
A VHF radio is the recommended marine communication tool, and it is critical in emergency situations if you're stranded or lost. But you have to set it up properly and know how to use it, so do this before you head out on the water.
Okay, so how does it work?
A VHF uses DSC connected to your GPS to send an SOS.
Huh?
VHF stands for Very High Frequency. This type of radio offers digital selective calling, or DSC, which means the radio is able to send a distress message to the Coast Guard. The DSC is able to send this message because it is connected to your GPS, or Global Positioning System. That's a satellite navigation system. With the push of a pre-programmed button, this radio can send an emergency alert directly to the Coast Guard and any other vessels in your area that are using a VHF radio. The alert automatically sends your GPS coordinates, which will help emergency services locate you.
Wow, these guys are serious about safe boating.
If you were in an unfamiliar area and you happen to fall overboard, how would you be able to describe where you are? Oh, I'm 10 waves to the east, or oh, I'm underneath the seagull. Oh, Not anymore.
Exactly. It is a really important communication tool.
Oh, Zach, look. I think that's a Coast Guard member. Maybe we can ask them more about boating safety.
Yeah, be great.
Hey, are you okay? We saw you splashing around.
Yeah, I promise I'm fine.
Well, good. Okay.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about boating safety technology. You see, we're filming this video and we've talked about PFDs and VHF radios. Do you actually have some time to tell us about other boating safety tech?
Absolutely. But why don't you dry off first and then we'll meet over there and talk about it.
All right, that sounds
Okay,
great.
great.
And we're back.
We're here with Kevin, who's a part of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. He can tell us more about advanced boating technology that could help us if we actually were to go overboard.
Well, there's all kinds of advanced technology, but some of the most basic ones to start with is exactly what you have on right now. You're wearing a very basic but critically important technology. Just wearing a PFD and having a whistle on that PFD is going to increase your chances of survival in the water in a big, big way. It won't save your life if you're not wearing it. It's the simplest technology, but it also is the most important to remember. There's all sorts of electronic technology out there that's available today as well. Where do you want me to start?
So, if one of us were to actually go overboard, what would be important technology to have?
One of the most important pieces to have, if you were offshore and you were to go overboard and get separated from your vessel, the boat that was carrying you, is a personal locator beacon. These are a radio transmitter that's received by satellites. So they'll know where you are within 200 or 300 feet, and they'll know you're in trouble. So they can give those coordinates to the Coast Guard and send a rescue boat or a helicopter to come get you. Now they also make these for boats in case the boat were to sink. Those are called EPIRBs, and those are attached to the boat, and it will automatically deploy when the boat sinks and send that same radio signal. And that's monitored around the world, so you could be halfway across the Pacific, and if your boat sank, that technology would let everybody know, and various Coast Guard agencies would start looking for you. Really important stuff to have when you're away from shore.
Okay, wait a second. I am so confused. What is the difference between an EPIRB and a PLB?
A personal locator beacon and an emergency position indicating radio beacon are very similar technologies, but one is meant to stay on you in case you go overboard, and the other stays on the boat in case it sinks. Both use satellites to signal for help. Do you remember another piece of boating technology that uses satellites? That's right, the VHF radio.
A VHF radio is very important to have if you're out there. So if something happens, you can call for help. The channel to be on, that's the channel to call for help on. That's what the Coast Guard monitors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all over the United States. So if you call for help there, you're going to get it.
Thanks for sharing with us. Are there any other safety items besides beacons and radios that are important safety items to have on board?
There are. There's all sorts of signaling equipment that you need to have. There's daytime signals and nighttime signals. So there's electronic ones. And again, those very basic ones. There's a big orange flag with what looks like a black exclamation point on it. You can fire flares into the air. And now there's a strobe light you can hold in your hand, and that strobe is visible for up to 10 miles. If you hold that up on your boat, everyone should know that's a boat in trouble. Now, falling overboard happens a lot of times when people like bump the throttle and the engine guns forward or stops, and there's a way to prevent that from happening. Now, do you know what an ECOS is?
Yeah, that's the cord that disconnects and cuts off the motor.
That's right. It's really important to have, especially on a boat that you're not in the cabin, if you're at the helm and you're vulnerable to, if the boat were to stop suddenly, being thrown overboard. Because what that will do is it will disconnect the engine and shut it off. You're exactly right. And that's required on boats that were built 2020 and newer. And if your boat's older than that and has an ECOS switch in the throttle area, you have to use it. If you're underway, that switch, that lanyard, that ECOS cable has to be connected because it could save your life. If you're thrown overboard, that boat could circle back and run you over, and that propeller's turning awfully fast. You'd much rather have that engine shut off and be able to get back aboard. Wearing the ECOS, having a personal locator beacon, if it's a bigger boat, the EPIRB, flares, strobe lights, flags, all those things are technologies that will help keep you safe.
Now, I don't think you could carry all of these in a small vessel, such as a kayak or even a personal watercraft. So which ones are required for different types of vessels?
You're exactly right. You don't have to carry all of that equipment in these much smaller vessels. It all depends. It depends on what type of vessel it is, what type of water you're on, what conditions you expect. requirements and should have are always two different things as well. And depending on what state you're in, there may be some additional things you need as well. We do vessel inspections in marinas all over the country. Our team is here. You guys want to come along as we do a couple and see what's on the boats?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, come on, let's go.
Okay, hold on. So what exactly is the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary? These boat inspections by Kevin and Bob are one of the vital roles in helping recreational boaters be prepared and safe on our waters. And they are performed by the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. While they help people comply with U.S. Coast Guard regulations, they're actually different than the U.S. Coast Guard itself. Here are a few differences. The U.S. Coast Guard is officially a branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. This unique branch is responsible for a variety of maritime duties, from ensuring safe and lawful commerce to performing rescue missions in severe conditions. Nearly 42,000 men and women actively serve in the Coast Guard to defend America's borders and protect the maritime environment. The Coast Guard Auxiliary, on the other hand, is composed of unpaid, volunteer U.S. citizens who assist the Coast Guard by providing resources, personnel, and facilities to help support operations and marine safety, security, and environmental protection missions of the U.S. Coast Guard. As we're seeing here, one important function of the Coast Guard Auxiliary is to support the Office of Boating Safety to help protect recreational boaters. Their functions include public education programs, vessel examinations, and the distribution of literature and information to the boating public. Like Kevin and Bob, members of the Coast Guard Auxiliary get to have fun and meet fellow boaters while also saving lives. And who can join the Coast Guard Auxiliary? Maybe even you. Really? Membership is open to all citizens of the United States and its territories who are at least 17 years old. Now back to our inspections. We met up with Bob, who is also a part of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, to do some voluntary boat inspections in the marina.
Robert and Dave volunteered to let us inspect their boats. Here's what we were looking for. For a boat of this size, these boat owners are required to have their boat numbers displayed, registration or documentation, PFDs, enough for everyone aboard the boat, visual distress signals such as flares, flags, or strobes, fire extinguishers, sound signals such as a whistle or horn, and navigation lights, along with many other boating safety technologies and any other items that are required by the state or local area you are boating in.
These are just a few of the many boating safety technologies that are required to keep you safe while out on the water. And although they aren't required, a marine radio, such as a VHF, is also recommended to have on board, along with an anchor, first aid kit, and a bilge pump. Let's see how our volunteers did.
You've got your documentation numbers on.
Yep.
I need to see some flotation devices.
Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 in here.
Flares.
Don't have flares because I have bored. There we go.
It's working.
There we go.
Fire extinguishers. You have a halon system?
Halon system in here.
Looks like Dave is doing pretty well. Let's see if his fire extinguishers are still safe to use.
They have to be less than 12 years old. The date might be on the bottom.
2016?
That one's good then.
Yeah.
Less than 12 years old.
Okay.
Carry a first aid kit.
Yes, sir.
Do you have the orange flag?
Yes, I do. It's down in there, yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
that's the daytime
Okay, distress.
distress.
Yep, that's there.
Not too bad. Let's check out Robert's boat. Let's start with an easy one. Does he have PFDs?
Yeah, you got to take them out of the plastic, make sure this is unlatched, ready to put on. There's no rubber bands holding the straps or anything, so if somebody gets in trouble, they can easily put it on.
I got flares.
You got flares?
Got flares. That's the only visual distress signal I have, though.
Do you remember what other visual distress signal is required?
You also have to have on board the flag, the orange flag, with the black exclamation point on it. For like $2.
Yeah, I don't have that.
So how do you think our volunteers did?
Technically, neither boater passed their safety inspection, but Dave was really close. Robert had a few things to add to his list before he was ready to set sail, but next time he hits the water, he'll be more prepared. What about you? Do you know what you need to bring with you on your next water adventure?
Maybe you don't have a big boat like Dave or Robert, but you might use something like a kayak or a canoe. These have requirements too. According to the U.S. Coast Guard, when operating a paddlecraft, you are required to have a PFD, a sound signaling device, like a whistle attached to your PFD, and navigation lights or white lights in case you're out after dark. Having these items aboard your vessel could save your life in the case of an emergency. So make sure to do your own vessel check before hitting the water.
I wish more people were as boating safety smart as Zach.
Thanks for taking us along and showing us a safety inspection.
You are most welcome anytime. And you know, you saw a lot of different technology out there on all these different boats. The most important thing, the one that had to be on every boat and on every person, is that PFD, it's that life jacket. You have to wear it. Thank you guys for coming. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys learned something today.
Yeah, thanks for meeting us.
We'll see you later.
Have a good
Safe
one.
out there.
Were you familiar with all this boating safety technology? Along with the proper PFD, these devices and knowledge could really help you in an emergency situation, especially if you're unconscious or have no idea where you are.
Let's say that you are on a boat and suddenly you were thrown overboard. Are you going to rely just on luck alone to get you back to shore safely?
Luck's not going to help you out there. It's all about having the proper tools and knowing how to use them.
You know, sometimes young people like us like to think that we're invincible.
Unfortunately, that's not true. Young people have to follow safety measures just like any other person.
Yeah, maybe even more. In fact, young people are more likely to encounter certain risks and pressures.
And now for a special message from Professor Zach.
Did you know that the human brain is not fully developed until approximately age 25? The prefrontal cortex is one of the last parts of the brain to complete neuronal myelination. It is responsible for judgment, behavior, and impulse control. Thus, the adolescent brain is not fully capable of assessing risk. Therefore, teenagers frequently make decisions that deny their mortality. Known as the invincible mindset, youth often believe that they're invincible and that nothing bad will ever happen to them. This is why we often see young people taking great risks, even when they have been informed of the consequences. Young person, you can exercise your own power, control, and responsibility for your life by learning to say no. Choose friends who make smart decisions and respect your choices. Remember, you only have one body. Be smart. Long live your frontal lobes.
This has been a special message from Professor Zach.
You know, alcohol affects a teenage brain differently than an adult one, especially when it comes to making decisions. Alcohol slows motor functions and reaction times, so no matter what age you are, drinking and boating is a bad idea.
Just like driving under the influence of alcohol, boating under the influence is illegal. You should always make sure to have a designated captain on board who will stay sober.
You know, Charlie, some people make the mistake and think that boats drive the same way cars do. What are some differences between driving a car and driving a boat?
Well, for starters, boats don't have brakes like cars do, so you can't stop as quickly. And because boats are affected by the water, you can literally get carried by the flow or get flipped over by a current.
The truth is, every vessel and every water activity has risk. But with knowledge, training, and preparation, we can make responsible choices and reduce that risk.
Human error is the leading cause of boating accidents, so the best way to avoid accidents on the water is to learn how to properly operate your vessel.
The best way to learn about boating safety is to take a boating safety course. These courses cover many aspects of boating safety, including boat handling, waterway etiquette, safety procedures, and even how to read the weather.
Some of these safety courses offer online certification tests for driving a boat in certain states, and some are just educational guides to help you learn more about your boat and how to be safer on the water. There are even courses that help educate boaters on how to properly use electronic navigation tools, like the ones Kevin showed us.
However, having the right gear with you is only helpful if you also know how and when to use it.
For example, according to estimates by the U.S. Coast Guard, personal flotation devices could have saved the lives of 80% of boating fatality victims had they been wearing them. Because accidents often happen so quickly, there's not enough time for people to grab PFDs before potentially falling overboard. That's why it is important to wear your PFD at all times while out on the water.
That goes for all boating safety equipment. These tools are only going to be helpful to you if you take the time to learn what they do, how to operate them, and when you should utilize them.
Taking a boating safety course can significantly improve your ability to troubleshoot during emergency situations while out on the water. Being prepared with the right gear and knowledge can save your life if you were to find yourself in an accident.
Hey Zach, I'm kind of a forgetful frog. Could you do a recap of everything we talked about today?
We've established that one of the most important steps in boating safety is to take a boating safety course.
That's right. And before you begin your voyage, you should make sure to check a few things first. Are there any storms in the forecast? Check to see if there are any known hazards in your area. And before you go boating, make sure to have a float plan. Who's going with you? Where are you going? And when? Be sure that someone who isn't going with you knows your plan.
Check over your vessel and make sure it's in working condition and that you have the appropriate gear.
Do you know the top deadliest mistakes that are made in boating? Not wearing your PFD.
The most effective PFD is the one you have on.
Driving under the influence.
You can be a good influence to your friends and family by always having a designated captain.
Excessive speed or going too fast.
Remember, driving a boat is not the same as driving a car.
Being an uneducated boater, not knowing the waterway rules or the safety precautions, or not knowing how to operate your vessel.
Take a boating safety course. These mistakes are all preventable.
So, what happens if you do find yourself thrown overboard or you fall into the water?
Whoa!
First, remain calm. Thrashing around will lead to exhaustion. Second, if you're wearing a PFD, keep it on. Third, if you're in cold water or you anticipate being in water for a very long time, tuck in your knees close to your chest and hug your arms to retain heat. Or you can float on your back and paddle to shore.
Remember, every moment counts during a real-life water emergency. You should always be prepared with the right gear and the right mindset. Do you remember all of the life-saving technology we learned about earlier today?
First off, we learned about the PLB, or Personal Locator Beacon. You can keep this device on your boat or attach it to your PFD to signal for help with the push of a button. Similarly, we also learned about the EPIRB, which stands for Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon, which is like the PLB but meant for your boat. This sends an emergency signal if the boat were to sink. There's also the VHF radio, which stands for Very High Frequency. You can use this radio to contact the U.S. Coast Guard by tuning it to channel 16. And of course, we also have our smartphones that we can use to check the weather, share our float plan, or even call for help. Another good life-saving technology that you should always make sure to use is your engine cutoff switch, or ECOS. This will stop the engine of your watercraft if you end up overboard. It's also important to have signaling devices like flares, strobes, or flags on your vessel so you can let people near you know you need help. And last, but certainly not least, is your PFD, or Personal Flotation Device. Wearing your PFD is the best thing you can do to prevent yourself from drowning in case you end up overboard.
And remember, it's always a smart idea to bring a buddy with you to any water activity just in case something happens.
Yeah, unless your buddy is someone who pushes you in the water. I can't believe you pushed me in.
Hey, it was for the show.
Oh, sure it was. I bet it's because I ate your chips at lunch.
No, really, it's better to show than tell, isn't it?
Well, you're lucky I was wearing my PFD.
I wouldn't have pushed you in if you weren't.
Oh, well, that's reassuring.
Imagine you got ejected from your boat, fell overboard, or hit a rock and sank your boat. You're stranded in the open water. Now you know how to improve your chances for survival. Or, even better, prevent an accident like this from happening. Being aware, educated, and prepared can make your adventure on the water safer and more fun.
So make sure you know the proper safety measures and precautions next time you head into the outdoors.
Grab your gear and let's explore as we discover the wild outdoors. Science, discovery, it's what we do. You can make our Earth a bright and better place by joining us in this wide open space into the outdoors.
The following organizations have provided funding for this Into the Outdoors television series.